Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We are going to read from the book A Second Chance. I request all of you to please hear attentively. Towards the end, we will be having an interactive quiz. Reading from the book A Second Chance, the story of a near death experience by His Divine Grace Vishwaguru Abhay Charanaраvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Chapter 13, Ajamila begins his degraded life. The Yamadutas continued. In the same way that the sun and moon are eclipsed by a lower planet, the Brahmana Ajamila lost all his good sense. Thus he always thought of the prostitute, and within a short time he took her as a servant in his house and abandoned all the regulative principles of a Brahmana. Ajamila began spending whatever money he had inherited from his father to satisfy the prostitute with various material presentations so that she would remain pleased with him. He gave up all his Brahmanical activities to satisfy her. Because his intelligence was pierced by her lustful glance, Ajamila engaged in sinful acts in her association. He even gave up the company of his extremely beautiful young wife, who came from a respectable Brahmana family. This rascal Ajamila, although born of a Brahmana family, lost his intelligence because of the prostitute's association, and thus he earned money somehow or other, regardless of whether properly or improperly, and used it to maintain her and her children. In this way, he spent his long lifetime transgressing all the rules and regulations of the Holy Scripture, living extravagantly, and eating food prepared by a prostitute. Therefore, he is full of sins. He is unclean and is addicted to forbidden activities. Ajamila did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, we must take him into the presence of Yamaraj for punishment. There, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and thus purified. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, verses 63 through 68. We must serve, but whom? As mentioned before, Ajamila was trained as a proper Brahmana from birth, and thus he was properly situated in service to his spiritual master, elders like his father, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But due to his association with a prostitute, he gave up his Brahminical engagements and became a servant of Lord Krishna's illusory energy, Maya. There are two kinds of servants, Maya's servants and Krishna's servants. Every living entity is originally a servant of Krishna. Lord Chaitanya himself affirms this Jivera Swarupahaya Krishnera Nityadasa. The constitutional position of the living entity is to be an eternal servant of Krishna. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 20, verse 108. In this world, everyone is trying to be a master. Individually and collectively, everyone is trying to assert, I am the Lord of all I survey. But this attitude is futile because by nature everyone is a servant. Instead of becoming a servant of Krishna, we have become the servant of our senses. In either case, we are servants. Therefore, those who are really intelligent think, if I have to work as a servant, why not be a servant of Krishna? Only the Krishna conscious devotee is sane because he accepts his natural position as a servant of Krishna. Worship of Lord Krishna or Vishnu is the actual goal of Vedic civilization. But the so-called Vedantists do not accept this. They divert their attention to the worship of demigods and advise that one may worship any of them. No, even demons or asuras sometimes worship demigods. Ravana was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, but he was an asura. Similarly, Hiranyakashipu was a great devotee of Lord Brahma, but he was also an asura. Anyone who is not a devotee of Lord Vishnu is an asura. That is the verdict of the Vedas. Ajamila was a Brahmana, which means that he was a servant of Narayana. In other words, he was a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is one who recognizes that Lord Krishna is the supreme proprietor and enjoyer, and that everyone else is his servant. Just as the master is the enjoyer of his entire establishment, so Krishna is the enjoyer of everything and everyone in both the material and spiritual worlds. Actually, no one else is the enjoyer. No one else is in the position to enjoy. Krishna is the only enjoyer. When we forget our relationship with Krishna as his eternal servitors, we become servants of our senses. Following the dictation of our senses, we enter into the darkest regions of illusion and are subjected to the punishment of Yamaraja. Sometimes our conscience forbids us, don't do this, but we surrender to our lust and greed, and thus we do it anyway. Krishna is within our heart, also dictating, don't do it. Yet still we do it. This kind of service to our senses simply brings suffering. Since we must serve, why not serve Krishna? Why should we serve our senses which are never satisfied anyway? We should become servants of God. That is the perfection of life. Otherwise, we shall be obliged to become servants of our senses and suffer. One who becomes a servant of Krishna becomes a Goswami, a master of his senses. The title Goswami indicates one who refuses to follow the dictations of his senses. Instead, he follows the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami did. Goswami is not a caste title. Before becoming a Goswami, Rupa Goswami served the Mohammedan government as a minister and was consequently rejected by the Hindu Brahmana society. But when he gave up the dictation of Nawab Hussain Shah to follow the dictation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord made him a Goswami. All genuine Goswamis are also Vairagis, renunciants. But if one is unable to be a real Vairagi, then he must become a Grihastha or householder. It is not that one may pose himself as a brahmachari or a sannyasi and at the same time indulge in illicit sex secretly. That is abominable. If a genuine householder practices karma yoga, giving the results of his activities to Krishna, he will eventually attain the platform of perfect renunciation. He should not desire to enjoy the fruits of his activities, but should instead work as a matter of duty, thinking, Krishna wants this. Krishna will be satisfied by my doing this, and therefore I must do it. This is the right attitude for a devotee. Arjuna was unwilling to fight for his personal interest, but When he understood that Krishna wanted him to fight, he took it as his duty. It must be done. It does not matter whether I like it or not. Krishna wants it, and therefore I must do it. That is the attitude of a renounced devotee of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66, Lord Krishna instructs his disciple Arjuna, just surrender unto me, and I shall protect you from all sinful reactions. And Arjuna accepts Krishna's instruction with the words, Karishye vachanam tava, I will do as you say. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 73. If we follow Arjuna's example, we will be in direct contact with Krishna and we will be able to surmount all difficulties in both our spiritual and material life. We hear the instructions of Krishna via the unbroken chain of disciplic succession or Guru Parampara. Acceptance of these instructions is called Shiksha or voluntarily following the instruction of the spiritual master. The independent nature of the living entity is that he does not want to follow the instructions of another living being, however pure. But when one voluntarily agrees to obey the orders of the spiritual master, one is following the orders of Krishna, and thus one's life becomes perfect. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 17, verse 27, Krishna says, Acharyam mam vijanīyan nāvamanyeta karhichit namartya buddhya suyeta sarvadeva mayo guruhu. One should know the Acharya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is the representative of all the demigods. Thinking the spiritual master an ordinary person and envying him are causes of a devotee's falling down. Devotional service requires training under the guidance of a spiritual master, and this guidance is received when one surrenders to the spiritual master, inquires from him, and renders service to him. But these are impossible for one who envies the spiritual master. Ruined by a prostitute, saved by the holy name. Ajamila was trained as a Brahmana, but he lost his position as a Brahmana by associating with a prostitute, so much so that he forgot all his Brahmanical activities. Nevertheless, at the end of his life, by chanting the four syllables of the holy name Narayana, he was saved from the gravest danger of falling down. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 40, Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a little devotional service can save one from the greatest danger. Devotional service, which begins with chanting the holy name of the Lord, is so powerful that even if a person falls down from the exalted position of a Brahmana through sexual indulgence, he can be saved from all calamities if he somehow or other chants the holy name of the Lord. This is the extraordinary power of the Lord's holy name. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is advised that one not forget the chanting of the holy name even for a moment. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha drudha. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 14. There are so many devotional services which can be performed by a person without chanting the holy name. One can chant the holy name without chanting the holy name. One can chant the holy name without chanting the holy name. One can chant the holy name without chanting the holy name. One can chant the holy name without chanting the holy name. became sinful. Also mentioned here is Ajamila's misuse of his inheritance. Customarily, everyone is eligible to inherit his father's property, and Ajamila also inherited the money of his father. But what did he do with the money? Instead of engaging the money in the service of Krishna, he engaged it in the service of a prostitute. Therefore, he was condemned. How did this happen? He was victimized by the prostitute's dangerous, lustful glance. A chaste and faithful wife will give birth to good sons, who will then offer oblations to their forefathers and thus deliver them if by chance they have fallen into a hellish condition. The very word putra or son means one who can deliver his forefathers from hell. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed this by his example when he went to Gaya to offer oblations to his forefathers. Even today, there is a Vishnu temple in Gaya where such oblations are offered at the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. There have been cases where one's father or mother took the body of a ghost at death, and after oblations were offered at the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu at Gaya, the father or mother was delivered. However, anyone who becomes a Vaishnava offers oblations to Vishnu at every moment, and thus his forefathers are automatically delivered. If one son in the family becomes a Vaishnava, he can deliver 14 generations of ancestors and 14 generations of yet unborn descendants. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. As sense control is the beginning of pious life, illicit sex is the beginning of sinful life. One should not engage in illicit sex or sex for any reason except having a child with one's wife. Marriage is meant for begetting children, and in that sense, it is a religious institution. Lord Krishna confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 11. Dharma aviruddho bhuteshu kamosmi. I am sex that does not contradict religious principles. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a devotee named Shivananda Sena who was a family man. Shivananda used to come with all the devotees every year to see Lord Chaitanya in Puri, and he came together with his wife and children. Once he came to see the Lord, and his wife offered her respects. At that time she was pregnant, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised Shivananda, this time when you get your child, you should give him the name Paramananda Dasa. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew that pregnancy resulted from sex, but he did not condemn sex in this case, as it was conducted according to scriptural injunction. On the other hand, there is the case of Junior Haridasa. He was a sannyasi, a renunciant, who was an intimate associate of the Lord. Once he merely desired sex and did not actually partake of it, and immediately Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his Paramatma feature, could understand this. The Lord then asked his other associates not to allow Junior Haridasa to come before him anymore. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Ramananda Raya, and other intimate associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requested, Junior Haridas is your eternal servant. Somehow or other he has committed this offense, but kindly excuse him. Still, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was firm in this respect and immediately replied, If you think Junior Haridas, if you like Junior Haridas so much, better you remain with him and I will go away. From that moment, nobody ventured again to request Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to excuse Junior Haridasa. When Junior Haridas became hopeless in his efforts to be excused by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he went to Prayag and drowned himself in the confluence of the rivers Yamuna and Ganges. Although Lord Chaitanya knew about this incident, after some time he inquired of his associates, Where is Junior Haridas now? They replied, Sir, you did not accept him, and so he has committed suicide. Lord Chaitanya said, Yes, very good. This is very good. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sometimes harder than stone and sometimes softer than a flower. That is the behavior of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shivananda was a bona fide grihastha, obeying the rules and regulations of householder life, whereas Junior Haridasa merely desired sex, but because he was in the renounced order of life, he was condemned. A sannyasi gives up his family and takes a vow to abstain from sex, but if he again takes to sex, he commits a very great sin. So, Ajamila was victimized by illicit sex with a prostitute. There are many instances throughout the world in which even a purified person falls victim to attraction by a prostitute and spends all his money on her. Prostitute hunting is so abominable that sex with a prostitute can ruin one's character, destroy one's exalted position, and plunder all one's money. Therefore, illicit sex is strictly prohibited. One should be satisfied with his married wife, for even a slight deviation will create havoc. A Krishna conscious Grihastha should always remember this. He should always be satisfied with one wife and be peaceful simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Otherwise, at any moment, he may fall down from his good position, as exemplified by the case of Ajamila. Considering the abominable character of Ajamila, the Yamadutas were perplexed as to why the Vishnudutas had forbidden them to take such a man to Yamaraj for punishment. Since Ajamila had not undergone atonement for his sinful acts, the Yamadutas thought he should be taken to Yamaraja to be purified. Punishment by Yamaraja is a process of purification for the most abominable sinful persons. Therefore, the Yamadutas requested the Vishnudutas not to obstruct their taking Ajamila to Yamaraja. Thus ends chapter 13 of the book A Second Chance, entitled Ajamila Begins His Degraded Life. So, I hope all of you have heard this chapter attentively. Now, we shall be having an interactive quiz. I shall be asking you questions with multiple choices. All you have to do is hear the question carefully and type your answers A, B, C, or D in the chat window. So here's the first question. Why did Ajamila lose all his Brahminical intelligence? Your options are A. Because he refused to study the Vedas. B. Due to association with a prostitute. C. Because he went to battle. Or D. Due to neglect of his father's instructions. Please type A, B, C, or D. Yes. All of you have given the right answer. Option B. Ajamila fell down from his Brahminical position, or he lost his Brahminical intelligence because of his association with a prostitute. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. Lord Krishna says, our desires, aspirations are dependent on whom we associate with. So, since Ajamila, even though he was a pious Brahmana and a Vaishnava, he associated with a sinful prostitute and engaged in sinful activities in her association. His intelligence got contaminated. He lost his first class Brahminical intelligence. So we should be very careful whom we associate with. That is the lesson for us. Even though we might have developed Krishna conscious intelligence over a period of time because of associating with devotees, but if we are careless and we associate with materialistic people, then all the years of cultivation of spiritual knowledge will at once, leave us. So therefore, we should be very careful not to associate with sinful people or non-devotees. Okay, the second question. According to this chapter, every living entity is naturally what? Your options are a master of the senses, B, dependent on God, C, a servant of Krishna, or D, a servant of everyone. What is the right answer? Yes. Five devotees have given the right answer. The right answer is C. Every person, every living entity by default or by nature is a servant of Krishna. That's the right answer. As Mahaprabhu quotes, Mahaprabhu is quoted here by Srila Prabhupada. Jiver Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nitya Dasa. Swarupa means our original position or natural constitutional position of every jiva is that we are eternal servants of Krishna. That is our natural position. Next question. What was the Yamaduta's opinion about Ajamila? Your options are A. He deserved to be taken to Yamaraj for punishment. B. He should be rewarded for his devotion. C. He was already liberated. Or D. He should atone for his sins. What is the right answer? What was the opinion of the Yamadutas about Ajamila? Okay, it is a little tricky question. Let us see who answers. No, D is not the right answer. Most of you have said D, that he should atone for his sins. No, Yamadutas were not telling that you go and atone for your sins now. Yamadutas already judged him, saying that since he has not atoned for his sins, now he must be subjected to punishment. He must be taken to Yamaraj for punishment at once. So that is the right answer. Option C is the right answer. Manjunath has given it correctly. Very nice. So, uh, during one's lifetime, whatever sinful activities one commits, if one does not atone for them properly in that same lifetime, then he will be subjected to punishment by the superintendent of death, Yamaraja. So, therefore, it is important that, first of all, as devotees, we should not indulge in sinful activities. And by unknowingly, if we have done any sinful activities, the best way to atone for it is to chant the holy names and to engage firmly in the devotional service of the Lord. Doesn't mean that anyway sinful activities get countered by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So side by side, let me go on chanting and let me go on committing sins. No, that is a very, very wrong attitude. That is like exploiting the merciful nature of the holy name of the Lord. It is an offensive way of chanting. So we should not think in that way. But we should avoid sinful activities by all means by keeping ourselves in the good company of devotees and always executing devotional service under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada. The next question. What is said about illicit sex in this chapter? Your options are A. It is acceptable in small amounts. B. It is the beginning of sinful life and can ruin one's character. C. It is allowed for Kshatriyas but not for Brahmanas. Or D. It can be countered by eating pure food. What's the right answer? So, Girish has given the right answer. B is the right answer. Illicit sex is the beginning of sinful life and it can ruin one's character. When character is lost, everything is lost, it is said. So, illicit sex ruins one's character, makes him thoroughly degraded, and also it is the beginning of sinful life. Next question, last question for today. What is the proper duty of a householder according to this chapter? Your options are A. To follow Krishna consciousness and remain satisfied with one's wife. B. To seek pleasure wherever possible. C. To avoid any religious activity. Or D. To serve the devatas nicely. Yes, all of you have given the right answer. A. To practice Krishna consciousness and remain satisfied with one's wife is the proper duty for a householder or a grihastha devotee. So, thank you very much for participating in today's reading session. We shall meet again in the next session and continue to read from this book, A Second Chance, the story of a near death experience, so wonderfully spoken, written by our beloved spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जाय, विश्व गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जाय.
Right.
हरे कृष्ण.